Well, South Korean prosecutors are seeking to arrest the heir to Samsung's empire. They have named J.Y. Lee as a suspect in the corruption scandal that led to the president's impeachment. CNN's Paula Hancock joins me now from Seoul in South Korea with more details on this. So, Paula, what all is the Samsung heir accused of doing exactly, and what's the likely outcome going to be here if history is our guide?
Well, Rosemary, he has had an arrest warrant sought against him on 3 charges, according to prosecutors: bribery, perjury and embezzlement. Now, this, of course, is all part of this ever-widening scandal here in South Korea, which has led to the impeachment of President Park Geun-hye by lawmakers. She's waiting to hear what the Constitutional Court says. But now it appears that it is embroiling the heir apparent of South Korea's biggest conglomerate. This is the richest company in the country, and he's considered one of the most powerful men in this country. So what we'll see now is Wednesday morning he will have to appear before a judge. They will then decide whether or not he should be arrested and whether he should be taken into detention. Now, if they too decide that, it shows that prosecutors believe they have enough evidence against him and that they fear he may either be a flight risk or he may try and destroy evidence before any potential court case. Rosemary?
And Paula, what has been the reaction on the streets of Seoul to news of this arrest warrant for a member of the richest and most powerful family in South Korea?
Well, certainly when you go out onto the streets on a Saturday night here, Rosemary, when these massive candlelight vigils are being held, they're not quite as big as they were, but they're still going on. The anger is not just against President Park Geun-hye, it is also against the heads of these companies. They are perceived as following a different rule of law in this country. We've, in recent years, seen a number of the heads of these big companies known as chaebols here in South Korea being charged, being indicted, being found guilty, and then subsequently not having served prison time or being having a presidential pardon just months or years later. And so there is a frustration that some of the heads of these companies, some of the rich and influential in this country, have a different law to those on the streets. So certainly I don't think there'll be a huge amount of sympathy for J.Y. Lee. We have had a comment from Samsung itself, though, and they have said it is difficult to understand the decision made by the special prosecutors, saying that they've never provided support because they never expected any reward. Now, this statement refers to why J.Y. Lee may be arrested, the fact that Samsung gave millions of dollars to Chae Sun-sil, a close confidant of the president, who's at the heart of this whole corruption scandal, and it is perceived or alleged that there were favours given back in return. Rosemary?
All right, CNN's Paula Hancock's bringing us up to date on this developing story from Seoul in South Korea, where it is just after 4 in the afternoon. Many thanks.
More going on. Jamie Metzell's with me, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council and the author of a new book, Eternal Sonata. Good to see you, sir.
Nice to see you.
Look, am I right? This smells to high heaven.
It's an unbelievable, crazy story, but it's really serious, and it's getting more serious by the day.
What is it that the president is alleged to have done?
So the president is alleged to have, her advisors worked with this woman, Choi Soon-sil, who's a childhood friend, and there's a whole other very complicated story of President Park, to essentially extort Korean mega corporations and chaebols to give money to a private foundation that was controlled by Mrs. Chae. So that's the thing. And so it's in a way, it's getting influence. So the corporations were pressured to give money, and that's what these raids are about. Did they get influence in exchange?
Right, but is there any evidence so far, other than allegation and rumor, that this happened?
Oh, absolutely. So there's a criminal investigation that is underway. There are members of the Blue House staff who have already essentially admitted that this was the case. And President Park is now officially a suspect in the case. So it's much more than rumor, and it's actually quite serious.
And this Chinese woman's father was a guru the current President Park's father.
That's exactly right. In 1974, President Park's father, also President Park, General Park, was assassinated. And after that time, Madam Che's father, Che Tae-min, contacted her father and her and said, your mother, your departed mother, has communicated with me and she wants me to deliver a message to you. And that began this very long relationship.
And has there been any allegations, besides the corruption and, and the nastiness, that the female president, the current President Parks, has had this relationship with Choi Soon-sil, sort of again a guru, advisor, a muse relationship?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's 100% clear that Madam Choi, Che is better pronunciation, had access to a lot of classified materials. She advised on appointments. She advised on speeches. So one thing that many people in Korea are concerned about is this level of access when Madam Che didn't have clearance.
I guess, you know, we can't get into the minutiae and the nitty-gritty of it, but all it really counts, the core question, will this bring down President Park?
I don't think it will. I think she's got a little more than a year left in her presidency. There are a lot of reasons why she's going to want to hold on, one of which is immunity. The opposition doesn't have a clear candidate to replace her. They're going to need a year. So I think it's more likely than not that she's going to limp forward, even if there is some kind of impeachment procedure.
Right, but limping forward at a time of greater animosity with North Korea and at a time of a new emboldened President Trump in the White House. This is a very fertile mixture, very noxious mixture.
It's fertile, it's noxious, and it's extremely dangerous. Korea.
That was the word.
Good. I'm here to help.
Thank you. Yes.
This is so. President-elect Trump, when he was on his campaign, he basically questioned America's security guarantees to Korea, which has been the foundation of Korea's security and stability since the end of the Korean War in the 1950s. So that's up in the air. China is newly emboldened. TPP, the cancellation essentially of TPP, is putting a lot of things up in the air. And at a time when Korea needs strong leadership, it will have for the next year extremely weak leadership.
We're glad to see you, sir. Please help us understand this more.
My
Come
pleasure.
back with the salacious details.
I will do it.
Thank you very much indeed.
I used to hold my freak back, now I'm letting go. I make my own choice, bitch, I run this show. So leave the lights on, no you can't make me behave.
Protests continue in South Korea due to outrage over Park's connections to a former cult leader's daughter. 1 million protesters took to Gwanghwamun Square in central Seoul Saturday, November 12th, in the nation's largest candlelit protest since 1987, calling for President Park Geun-hye to step down. Choi Soon-sil, who is a close confidant and mentor to President Park, and who has known her since the 70s when her father, Choi Tae-min, a shamanesque cult leader, was the mentor of Park's father, Chung-hee. The ties and relative historical repetitiveness has brought about a large-scale protest against Park Geun-hye, calling for her to step aside. These protests are the largest since the June 1987 protest that ousted General Chun Do-hwan. The protests are largely based around dissatisfaction of the price of rice, which is at 20% of that of dog food, and that the price of rice has dropped to a 21-year low. Another issue that they seem to be very angry about is the performance-based salary system in the country, which has no objective standard to a worker's performance, and many feel that they have been performing to the rate that they should be earning more, but they're not being compensated for it. These protests seem to be largely ignored by most Western media outlets, when it is obvious that this is a large destabilization in there's a large destabilization in the South, so much that this could mean the end of Park's regime. Were this in any other country, particularly Venezuela or Syria, the media would be all over this. But as it is a nation with an alliance with the West, particularly to U.S. imperialism, the media remains relatively silent. It is interesting to note how Western media talks about a cult in the DPRK, but there is obviously a cult of personality in the South, exercising control over the government and interfering in the governmental affairs. It's also interesting to note that we rarely see protests such as this in the North, and the largest protests we've seen are actually calling for the Korean reunification of the peninsula. So it's one of those weird things where we're actually starting to see a lot of protests against Park and, you know, pretty much her right-wing fanatical regime. It's funny how all this is breaking down, and yet again, the main media is ignoring it. It will be interesting to see how Park's government will continue to survive over the next coming months. I'm NorCal Nick, leader of the revolutionist movement, and this has been NorCal Corner. Peace.